We know that these clubs have super huge benefits for kids in schools. We know they're like literally life-saving.
That was Allie Martin, assistant principal at Northwest Middle School back in November 2019, talking about how the 2007 law called the Student Clubs Act is hurting groups like Gay Straight Alliances or GSAs by requiring students to get parental permission before they can join. Welcome to our In Focus discussion tonight. Over the past year, there's been an 83% decrease in GSAs in schools across the state. This weekend, the Utah Pride Center will host a virtual conference for students, educators, and caregivers on how the community can create safe spaces in schools for our LGBTQ+ youth. Joining us now live in studio is Savannah Skyler. She is a student and a speaker at the Pride Not Prejudice Conference. Savannah, thanks for being here tonight and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. This is really an honor.
Savannah, you are known for your courageous story of coming out. A video of you speaking at church about being a lesbian went viral when your microphone was silenced. Take us back to that day. What made you decide to come out to your church, and what went through your mind when your microphone was silenced?
Well, I actually get this question a lot. So what I was thinking of when I was talking to these group of people was, hey, these are my family. I've been living here for 8 years. This is my ward, and it's just important that I come out to these people because I see them as my caregivers and the teachers that I've been with for the past 8 years. What was like, man, it's just very difficult thinking back on it because when my microphone was silenced, it was almost like, I compare it to this. When I was going on stage, I put every emotion into a bottle, and when my microphone was shut off, that bottle cracked. It exploded, and I felt every type of emotion. I felt anger, I felt sadness, but I also felt relieved because it was almost letting go of something that I knew was keeping me down, and I was finally out and I was allowed to be who I am.
What you did that day, I like to call it trailblazing, because you're trailblazing a path for other teens who may be in your situation now or in the future. And I think it opened up a can of worms in a good way, right? And opened up more opportunities for you. One of your goals is to spread awareness and create change within religious and LGBTQIA+ intersecting communities. Tell us about why this is so important, or why there's a need here in Utah.
That's actually a very good question. I think it's very needed within Utah because this is a topic that's not usually brought up. This did definitely give me more opportunities to speak up because now in my school setting, I am able to be more confident in myself. I'm able to talk against hatred and resentment and pushback and resistance against my own identities. I'm able to help fundraisers and speak at protests, and this is just something that within a religious aspect, there needs to be an intersection within these communities. It needs to be talked about.
As a current student, and based on your own personal experience, how do you feel that we are doing in Utah schools to make learning environments inclusive for LGBTQ+ students, and is there things that we can do or make better?
My favorite thing is when teachers are willing to learn. Even if you're an ally or a part of the community, if you're able to learn, you're able to bring awareness to these topics, you're able to educate yourself on these, because we can always learn more. And I think that's something that we definitely succeed a lot within Utah. The more we can do is just kind of working together. I think people try and work in these little small groups, and if we can just work together as a big community and come together and speak against these types of resistance and pushback, then we can definitely make a change.
Now, you are a speaker for the Pride Not Prejudice Conference this weekend. Can you give us kind of a preview of what you'll be saying in your speech, and what do you hope to accomplish with your message?
I'm going to be hosting a panel called, the main topic is going to be a call to action. I'm going to have 4 other panelists. One of them is my best friend, Cameron, and his birthday is actually today, which is pretty great. I also have one of my best friends, which is Bobby. They are a non-binary person that really was an inspiration for me coming out. We have Savannah Von Cotier, who is a drag queen, and it's a very important part of the queer community. And I also have Jake Silo and Ellen Kahn, who are both huge advocates, big public speakers. Ellen Kahn is someone that's in charge of youth ambassadors, and Jake Silo is a Black Lives Matter protester and also an LGBTQS advocate. With this message, I'm just hoping to get caregivers and teachers and adults in LGBTQ+ youth lives to stand up and to speak out against hatred.
Savannah, you are such a smart and bright person, and listening to you speak, I can't believe you're only 16. I feel like you have an experience of a full adult, and it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but you've been hearing from Savannah Skyler, who is a student and a speaker at this weekend's Pride Not Prejudice conference. Savannah, thank you so much for being on the show. Have fun at the conference this weekend.
Oh, thank you.
There's something so important about seeing yourself reflected. Ultimately, we really do need every state to incorporate LGBTQ history.
That was Sarah Warbelow with the nation's largest gay rights advocacy group, the Human Rights Campaign, back in August 2019, after Illinois became the fourth state to require LGBTQ history to be taught in public schools. Currently, there are 5 states that still have anti-LGBT curriculum laws after Utah repealed ours in 2017. Thanks for staying with us for our second In Focus discussion tonight on creating safe spaces in schools for LGBTQ+ youth. Joining us now live in studio is Kody Colvin, the assistant principal of Escalante Elementary. Kody, thanks for carving out time for us tonight. We're looking forward to the discussion with you.
Thanks for having me tonight. I'm excited to be here.
Kody, as an educator and based on your experience, how do you think we are doing in Utah schools to promote an inclusive environment for our LGBTQ+ youth? Where do we need improvement?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, most educators you'll meet really want what's best for students, and they really want to ensure that they're creating this really welcoming environment where all the students can thrive. But for a long time, and even today, we still see a lack of conversation around LGBTQ identities in schools. And particularly in the world where I work in elementary, there's even a lot less. And many people feel that LGBTQ topics historically have not been really appropriate for elementary students, even though we know that elementary age students have family members, they themselves are coming out and starting to identify as LGBTQ, and we have a lot of access to technology. So right now I think in Utah we have some room to grow and an opportunity to wrap that into our curriculum and talk about LGBTQ identities more.
And that's that time, elementary school, is when a student's brain is developing. And we just need to show them, normalize, right, our LGBTQ friends and family, not make it feel like they are different from us. We got to normalize that. Now, you co-founded a group called Friends, Allies, and Mentors of the LGBTQIA community in 2016. What sparked the idea to form the group, and what are the goals as group, or what's the goals of the group, I should say?
Yeah, so FAM, myself along with another educator in the summer of 2016, after teaching he for 4 years and me in my 5th year, realizing that in our pre-service coursework and even on our job training, we ourselves felt really unprepared to support conversations around LGBTQ identities. And knowing that this conversation hasn't been common practice, it's super important as educational practitioners that we receive the training and the practice before we navigate those conversations. So FAM's real goal, even today, is trying to meet that kind of opportunity that we've seen in helping train teachers and administrators to better support their LGBTQ students and families.
Now, according to a 2019 Student Health and Risk Prevention statewide survey, approximately 8.8% of youth identified as LGBTQIA+. At the same time, it was also reported in that year, 66% of students reported that there were no LGBTQ+ related topics taught in the classroom. How concerning is this, and what kind of impact can it have on a student to not have this representation in their learning environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think this data for Utah is really crucial, and it's one of the first years where we've actually started to ask students And this particular survey is 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade, I believe, so it has a pretty good sampling about their identities as specific to the LGBTQ community. I think what this data continues to highlight is that our students are still feeling kind of unsafe, or that some schools and some classrooms are remaining hostile towards LGBTQ students. And just like FAM's mission, one of our goals is really to help to support teachers to start to change that narrative and to give teachers the tools to better support those conversations so that our LGBTQ youth can start to feel more seen and validated in K-12 schools.
We have time for one more question. I really want to squeeze this one in. What would be your message to other educators and administrators in Utah who may be lacking the awareness or resources to create a safer space for LGBTQIA+ students?
For educators and administrators who are maybe feeling a little unprepared now, that's okay. I myself, just a few years ago, felt unprepared to navigate these conversations effectively. But through the Pride Center, through FAM, Encircle and other organizations, there are a lot of educators that have started to do the work and connections that you can find to support to do this work. And most importantly, the more that we embed this work and validate our LGBTQ students' experiences will make for them to have a more memorable and enjoyable experience. So I encourage all educators, administrators, and school employees to really think about the impact this inclusive work can really have on our queer community.
Great message. Folks, you've been hearing from Kody Colvin, the assistant principal of Escalante Elementary. Kody, thanks for joining our conversation tonight to provide that educator perspective. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Anything that goes on in those schools on that campus, parents should be involved and always know what their child is doing. And they send their children to the public schools expecting that their children that they'll always know what their children are doing.
That was Gail Ruzica, president of the Utah Eagle Forum in November 2019, who was involved in promoting the 2007 law called the Student Clubs Act, which requires all students to obtain parental permission before joining an extracurricular activity, including gay-straight alliance groups. The concern is not all students feel comfortable coming out to their parents, which can deny them life-saving resources at school. Welcome to our third and final In Focus discussion tonight on creating safe spaces in schools for LGBTQ+ youth. Joining us live in studio now is Amanda Darrow, the Director of Youth, Family, and Education Programs at the Utah Pride Center. Amanda, welcome to the show and thanks for being part of the discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Amanda, tell us about your professional experience in education and your role now at the Utah Pride Center and how it ties into the conference this weekend.
Yeah, so I've been in education for about the past 6 years, both elementary and higher ed. And when I was at the elementary school, I started to realize how heteronormative the classroom was for our students. That means that it's really focused for heterosexual individuals, and the LGBTQIA community is left out of those classrooms. So I went and I got my master's in education, and my thesis work was on the effects of a heteronormative classroom on LGBTQIA students. And when I finished that, I found a position at the Utah Pride Center working at the Youth, Family, and Education Department. And from there, I vowed to always make sure spaces at homes, schools, in our community, they're inclusive to our LGBTQIA students.
I love that passion. I can see that it's coming from personal experience. Now, the Utah Pride Center is seeing a high demand for the Pride Not Prejudice conference this year. Any idea why this may be?
Absolutely. So last year when we put on this event, there was only 33 educators that came to the conference. And this year we're already above 300. So the difference, one thing I'm thinking is that it's online. We are reaching the whole state of Utah. We have teachers from Washington County all the way up to Logan that have signed up for this conference. It has become more widespread being online, but also I've looked back and I've reflected on the last 4 years. We've had such a divide in this country, and now we've just become refreshed. We're starting to realize that we need to lift our community up, and the educators in Utah know that this is the time more than ever to lift those students up.
I mean, I hope that's good news. It's always better to have more people at the conversation table. Let's bring up a graphic for this next question. Out of 429 high schools in Utah, only 7 have a registered GSA group, which is down from 41 last year. What could be some of the contributing factors to this, and what kind of consequence can this have for our LGBTQ plus students?
Absolutely. So my first theory is COVID, right? We're in a pandemic, so I'm starting to see that we need teacher advisors to run GSA groups. I think that our teachers are at their bandwidth. They are having trouble just joining and being that teacher advisor for groups. So, you know, it's okay that our teachers aren't able right now because they're dealing with shutdowns. They're dealing with, you know, online teaching at some situations. That is one reason. The second would be that we are not registering. I don't know if our GSAs know that they actually need to register their GSA. So if they go to utahpridecenter.org, they can go to our site and register their GSAs. That will get them resources from our center on how to help run their GSAs. And we can help them run it in a COVID-friendly way. Another thing with these GSAs is that there has been talk from some educators that their districts have said, you know what, let's focus on academics. Let's focus on not having a GSA this year or any other extracurricular club. And that's okay. If your district's telling you that, please follow district measures. But you asked what the problem with not having a GSA is. This is the safe space for our students. This is the part that tells them they belong in these schools. And when they don't have that space, we're telling them they don't belong, they're not important, this is not a space for that. That can be detrimental.
We have about a minute left. I want to get details of the conference in. Real quick, can you give us a preview of some of the topics that will be discussed, what kind of resources will be offered, and then we'll wrap if you can tell us details, dates, times, how people can register, and if there's any cost.
Absolutely. So some of the conferences or workshops that we're going to be holding, you heard about Savannah's panel. That's one of the keynotes. Our other keynote is done by Dr. Kyle Myers, who will be talking about gender creative classrooms. We also have workshops from 4 different lenses, right? We have workshops for administrators who will be looking at policies. We have workshops by teachers who will be looking at how to make your classrooms inclusive. We have a panel of parents who will be talking about their experiences advocating for their children throughout districts. And then we have student tracks. A very amazing talk will be done on self-love and healthy relationships in the queer community. So a lot of amazing talks. There's also another one on disability and gender.
Oh,
so
let's get the details in there. Date, time.
Date, time, yeah, let's jump into date time. So Friday night,